I'm experienced.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to 3 Rounds with Daniel Cormier. Abu Dhabi was fantastic last week, but the travel was nuts. UFC 280 made for it. I met Steve Harvey. I saw my good friend Steven Seagal again. But I really missed you guys not doing the show last week. So I'm back, and I'm ready to get to the fight. Let's get into round one.
I'm gonna show you how
As we get into round one, and UFC 280 just passed, let's call this one Wrestling Makhachev. Islam Makhachev showed last weekend that he is one of the most dominant fighters in the UFC. I was there when Islam first got to AKA with Khabib. Khabib came first through King Muhammad Lawal. Their religion drew those guys together. Khabib was training in New Jersey before, kind of fell into our laps at the American Kickboxing Academy and became a part of our family. He brought two guys with him, Islam Gray and Islam Red. Islam Gray being Islam Makhachev, Islam Red being Islam Makhachev. But because we didn't know how to say their names as easily, we started calling them by the color of the T-shirts that they wore all the time. Islam Gray was Islam because he wore dark colored T-shirts. Islam Red was Islam Makhachev. This all kind of started because that was Khabib's idea of how we differentiated these two. But right away you could see that these guys were very special. Islam did not understand English one bit. But the one thing he did understand, if not for anything else, he understood wrestling. And you knew right away that this kid was special. That he had an ability to do things in the wrestling realm that you expected from Russians if you were familiar with Russians in wrestling. I'd been to Dagestan before. I wrestled there. They opened a brand new arena back in the day. We wrestled out there for money. I got into a fight. There's a famous video of me fighting with the guy on the wrestling mat. That was in Dagestan. So I am very familiar with them as a wrestling country. But I didn't know that the MMA fighters had that ability. Islam did. Islam had this confidence and belief about himself that you just weren't going to take him down. It didn't matter who was wrestling with him. It didn't matter if it was me, if it was Kane, if it was Luke Rockhold, if it was Khabib. He just thought that he wasn't going to get taken down by us. It didn't matter that you were the more credentialed guy or the better guy. He had this belief that you couldn't take him down. The one thing that I've learned about Islam is while his wrestling is very good, he's got very specific takedowns in the way that he does them. They're not traditional. It's not a single leg or a double leg. He's not the best at that. Khabib was really good at that, getting to the legs, taking you down, lifting you, and tripping you. Islam does a lot of his best work from the clinch, and that is why he couldn't take Do Bronx down as easily because Do Bronx has very good balance. Islam also scores a lot defensively. This dude has one of the most difficult legs. He always said that, and I'll make a YouTube short about this where he goes, take this leg. This leg cannot be scored on. It's his right leg. He keeps it in front. He fights southpaw. It's so hard to take him down when you get to the single. Defensively, he's as hard as anyone to take down. But he does have some offense. And he did it to one of my best young wrestlers, Chase Aldate. Back in the day, he hit him with this Russian wrist snap. And I'll show you the clip right now.
Oh, my God. Oh, tell me you got that. Hey, send me that.
Now, as good as Islam is at doing this takedown, it's become a thing for kids on my team. Because now Chase did it in the match right after Islam hit it.
Feed him the wrist.
And Moses Mendoza now is a kid that wrestles on my team now, and he hit it in the finals of the Fargo National Tournament. This is the toughest tournament in high school wrestling. He wrist snapped someone to get a takedown against a kid. It's crazy. But that all comes from the confidence to try these things. Wrestling Islam Makhachev is not fun by any means. He's strong, he's durable, And he has an understanding of balance that is not like many that I have wrestled with. I'm much bigger. And while I may be able to bully him down to the ground, it was always much more difficult than I ever anticipated. Because when you think you're wrestling a 155-pounder, you think you should be able to just throw him down and treat him as if they're your little brother. It's not the case with Islam. Never was the case with Habib either. But with Islam, it's a little different because that guy is so hard to take down once you get to his legs, almost to the point that he almost invites you in. Now he's lost his mind when he says, bring Jordan Burroughs and all those guys, because those guys would tear him apart. I don't care how good he is at wrestling in MMA. Islam ain't beating Jordan Burroughs. And I tell these guys that all the time as I get to the last 10 seconds of the round. This guy is a good wrestler. And this guy is on his way to becoming a very dominant champion. The Islam Makhachev era is upon us now, guys. Strap in.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
Let's get into round number 2 now. And I want to talk about Sean O'Malley, and this is the question. Is Sean O'Malley next? Is Sean O'Malley next for a championship opportunity? Now, guys, I know I get accused of being a UFC shill and being a guy that loves the company that ultimately writes him massive checks over and over again. I don't know why anyone would not love the company that writes them massive checks multiple times per month. I don't know. Maybe you guys don't like to get paid, but I do. But my opinions are still my opinions. And I'm not the UFC. But when I ask that question, is Sean O'Malley next? I would consider making Sterling's next fight Sean O'Malley right now. Right now, I would think, let's do Sean O'Malley. Yesterday on DC and RC, I said it's going to be Henry Cejudo. And I believe that. Because Sean O'Malley is going to need some time to recover, because that was a war against Petr Yan. A war. He got beat up. Sean O'Malley had to do things that he's never had to do before and rely on things that I'm not even sure he knew he had inside of him to get through what he got through with Petr Yan. But I still would think about maybe making this guy next, because regardless of what you feel and how you feel the fight was judged, at the end of the day, Sean O'Malley got his hand raised. But I'm going to tell you some factors as to why I believe that O'Malley should fight right now. And I believe that for the sport, Henry Cejudo, as the guy that left as the double champion, should be next. But I'm also going to tell you why I think it's more than likely to be Sean O'Malley. One, when I was with Henry Cejudo and Aljamain Sterling in Arizona, we talked about them fighting. Henry was very aware that he had to be 6 months in the USADA pool before he can fight. When I spoke, they talked about them fighting in November. Aljo said something as to why he can't fight in New York. I don't remember why, but there was a reason why he could not fight him in November. This was before he knew he was going to fight TJ Dillashaw in Abu Dhabi. He said he could fight October or December. Henry knew that he had to be in the USADA pool all that time in order to fight in November. I'm not sure if he's re-entered into the USADA pool immediately. If he did, as my guy starts to try to research whether or not he's in, if he did, now that makes a difference in the story, because if he's eligible now, with Sean O'Malley needing to recover, but if he didn't, 6 months before Henry Cejudo has the opportunity to, he got back in April. My guy just told me he got back in April. So again, Henry Cejudo will be eligible very quickly. Here's the second reason. I love Henry. That's my boy. I've been vocal about him and our relationship in the past. I think he's the ultimate winner. But here's the other reason. Sean O'Malley will be the bigger fight for the champion. It's that simple. It's that simple. Just is what it is. Because the reality is this. Part of the retirement for Cejudo was dudes competed at a long time at the highest level. But the reality is he wanted more money. And that didn't happen. Why? Because he doesn't move the needle as much as he hoped for or he thought he did. Sean O'Malley is constantly talking about renegotiating his contract. Renegotiating. Every time. We've had him on DC and RC. We've talked to him about it. He said he's going to do it. And every time, what happens? He renegotiates the contract and he gets more money. Why? Because Sean O'Malley moves the needle. People pay attention. And because people pay attention, he has that ability to go back to the brass and go, hey, could I get more money? Can I get paid? Can my contract look different? Henry Cejudo tried that himself, and it didn't work out. So now he's back, try to earn a championship fight. Guys, you got to make people care. As long as they care, you got an opportunity. Sean O'Malley was thought to be a gifted fighter. But I think what was more important after last weekend is that you learned that the kid's tough as nails. Some of the shots that he took from Petr Yan would have knocked people out. So no matter what you think about the decision, Sean O'Malley is real, guys. He's not just some annoying person that people are trying to push onto us. He's a real high-level fighter. And bantamweight got a new contender last weekend, and I believe that this kid's going to be tough for just about everybody that he fights.
I'm going to show you how
All right, guys, it's time for round 3. And Anderson misspoke. Anderson misspoke? We are on the verge of what I feel is Jake Paul's biggest fight, most competitive fight, against one of the greatest UFC fighters of all time, Anderson Silva. We're days away, and you got to start to promote and you start to do the media. And Anderson misspoke? I mean, you are so aware of what's happening in the build to these fights. To misspeak, I get it. It's not his first language, but I think for a guy that lived at the top of the sport for a long time, Anderson understands what and what not to say. He said this earlier in the week. He said, in my last sparring with Eliezer Silva or Eliza Silva, my partner knocked me out 2 times. When I finished the training, I speak to my coach and I go, Coach, let me ask you something. Why does the guy knock me out 2 times? And the coach goes, you need to prepare for a war. Now, when you say something like this going into a boxing match, obviously all ears perk up. So Anderson has now walked back those comments and said that he misspoke and he meant the guy knocked him down 2 times. But even hearing that the guy knocked him down 2 times, are we going to feel any better about hearing that when he got knocked down twice in his prep? As people who are from the MMA community who are on Team Silva, do we feel better knowing that he's only been dropped and not knocked out? You don't want to be getting knocked down before a fight, especially a boxing match against a kid that has a real good right hand. Now, you guys know, and I've said this publicly, Anderson Silva was the guy I thought was going to win the fight. But these statements, they got me real concerned, bad. Like, I'm concerned bad as hell, if I'm being honest with you. Because if he's getting dropped while wearing his headgear, because you spar with your headgear, if he's getting dropped in practice by his training partners, when in reality, most times your training partners take care of you, he's 47 years old. It's a guy that we've seen get knocked out before. We saw him get knocked out by Chris Weidman. We saw him get knocked out, on a number of occasions. Not many, but we've seen him go out before. It makes me concerned as an Anderson Silva guy. Now, there are big shots that happen in sparring. Yes, and sometimes the bell gets rung. That's true. It happens. But to hear that this great fighter is getting knocked down multiple times and then going into a fight with a Jake Paul who has real power, it's very concerning. So maybe now we're getting into the thought of, is the damage over such a long career that is starting to kind of get to Anderson? And oh my goodness, the Arizona Commission, y'all know how I feel about them. They say they're going to look into the situation. I think the Arizona Commission is as out there, if I'm being nice, as any commission in fight sports. Remember what they did to Charles Oliveira? I mean, come on, guys. The guy's 0.1 pound over, 0.2 pounds over. You have no one watching the scale, allowing these guys to check their weight on a bad scale. To the point now that the UFC has security that watches the check scale to make sure that it's not getting messed with. Because in Arizona, they allow for the check scale to be tampered with, which ultimately cost the guy his championship, put him in a fight with Islam Makhachev, and now he doesn't have a belt anymore. Anderson got dropped twice. Scary for me. But am I going to watch the fight this weekend? Absolutely. Am I assured in my pick as I was before? Not a chance. I still believe that Jake Paul will get tested because I believe that he can still be presented some challenges by Anderson. I just don't know if Anderson, especially after what I've read this week, is the guy that is going to beat him like I thought he was before. It's a big fight for Showtime. It's a big moment for Jake Paul. It's a risky fight. Does Anderson get it done? I guess we find out in a couple days. All right, guys, another fun show, but now it's time for my final thought. It's time for us to give Aljamain Sterling his roses. This dude deserves credit. Sure, he's had a run of bad luck. From the knee to the decision that some people thought he lost to TJ Dillashaw going in there injured. But all this dude has done is build the longest win streak in bantamweight, and he's shown improvement every time he goes into the octagon. And while people want to judge Aljamain Sterling, he's getting better, and the only people that should be trying to discredit anything about what he's doing is future opponents. And when you do that as a future opponent, it better be fight promotion. Because if you believe what you're spewing, if you believe the nonsense that comes out of our mouth at times, you will put yourself in trouble when you step into the octagon with Aljamain Sterling. He is the champion of the world, and rightfully so with the way that he's fighting. Guys, we have a Savage now as a champion at bantamweight. And y'all better recognize and pay homage to the Funk Master. Until next time, like, subscribe, tell your friend to tell their friend that DC has a YouTube channel. Till next time, guys. Peace.